Okay, I'm going to mute Callan and take it away.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. It's right at 2:01 now, so we'll go ahead and get started. There are over almost 300 of you, and people are still joining, so thanks for being on this today. We're excited. As we mentioned earlier, almost 1,000 registered, so thanks if you were sharing our info. Thank you for getting the word out. We really appreciate it. My name's Callan, and I'm the director of the new Peer Recovery Center of Excellence. And today we have Joseph Hogan Sanchez with us for training looking at guiding principles of recovery. And so we're really excited to have him. And there's an evaluation that you'll get at the end of this training. And we always try to look at those. And the feedback from our last couple of presentations has been that we needed 3 to 8 hours for follow-up questions and details for the topics. So I just wanted to kind of give a heads up that this will be a taste, a bit of information, but if you do have specific questions, we will try to answer them today. But I just wanted to also let everyone know that we will have specific trainings in 2021. So we'll take a deeper dive into some of the topics that we've covered in this webinar series. With maybe potentially more series that are focused on them or focused on different populations that they might pertain to. So just to give you a heads up, it'll be an overview, and then in the future we'll have more specific trainings for you. But we really appreciate the feedback. So we can go on to the next slide. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome. If you've heard this before, thanks for bearing with me. This is just to give you an intro to the Peer Recovery Center of Excellence. As I mentioned, we're new. We just got started in September with SAMHSA. And so this just gives you a brief overview of what we'll be doing. We do have a peer-led steering committee that guides our work. So since we're a peer-focused center, we wanted to make sure that that was represented. So you can see that at the top. And then just 4 of our focus areas to point out are clinical integration, RCO capacity building, workforce development, and evidence-based practices. So that's what a lot of our trainings will center around. But then starting in early 2021, you'll also be able to request individual trainings or technical assistance for more specific needs that are directly related to your organization or your community or state. So look forward to that. Our website will be up and going very, very soon, and you'll be able to submit those requests. So we can move on to the next one. Yes, so Cindy's going to take over this part and then hand it off to our presenter. But I just wanted to say thanks again to all of you for joining us. We've got almost 400 people also in the feedback said they wanted to know who else they were on with, because in this webinar setting, you can only see the presenters. You can't see all the everyone who's attending. So almost 400, and I'll pass it off to Cindy now.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. I do see a lot of familiar names in here, so thanks for rejoining us. One of the things I want to make sure of is that when you use the chat feature, which is the main way we'll communicate today, make sure you, when you send it that it's to all panelists and attendees, and then everyone can see what your comments are, if you share resources, things like that. We have Keegan Weeks here is going to be monitoring our chat feature. We also have a Q&A feature that someone just used. And we have Callan, our director, and Chris Kelly, one of our core team leads, that will be working the Q&A section. We may pause a bit for a question or two, but primarily we're going to just go ahead and stick with the chat. We'll be answering your questions by typing them in on the Q&A. Yes, you all are muted. Somebody asked that, and only our panelists and facilitators will be live on camera. Lastly, and most importantly, you will get these slides post-webinar. I always say it's going to be about a week. I try to get them out sooner, but you will receive the link to the recording, the slides, and more importantly, you will get a link to a certificate of participation for this 1-hour webinar. And again, in about 1 week's time, it'll come from me. And I think that's it. Helen, did I miss anything?
I think you covered it.
Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Joseph. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you, Callan, and to APRCOE. My name is Joseph Hogan Sanchez. My pronouns are he, him, and his, and I am the Director of Programs with Faces and Voices of Recovery. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I initiated my recovery process in 2005 with the assistance of Peer Recovery Support Services out in El Paso from a recovery community organization out there. If you've attended the previous webinar, you've perhaps heard about recovery community organizations, RCOs. So I had the pleasure of starting off my recovery process there. Recovery has given me the opportunity to work with and alongside people who are just as passionate for recovery and peer recovery support services as I am. And it's an honor and privilege to see all the names popping up from all the different states around the nation. It's great to see that. So if I'm looking this way, I'm looking at your chat as well. Oh, great. Fantastic. So over the course of the time that we're together, hopefully by the end, you'll be able to identify guiding principles in action in your work and what you do in your communities. You'll be able to advance recovery opportunities and apply the concepts that we go over, those guiding principles of recovery, 4 major dimensions that support recovery, and also being able to understand the importance of key practices to inform a lot of the programs and service delivery to meet those guiding principles. So we start off, before we dive into the guiding principles, we start off by setting the stage. With the definition of recovery. What is recovery? Here on the slide in front of you, a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Throw a yes or no into chat if you're familiar with this definition. Yes or no into chat if you're familiar with this definition. Oh, I see a lot of yeses. Yes. A big yeses too. Fantastic. Look, it's like a ticker tape. It just keeps going, Keegan. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's a great definition put out by SAMHSA. You'll see that here on the slide as well. But not too many folks know or are aware of or familiar with how this definition was developed. I'm super excited to tell you that it was developed by folks in recovery. So really a for us, by us model. I feel it's important to mention that the definition that we just saw is also a result of a year-long process of engaging people with lived experience. The version before that was recovery from alcohol and drug problems is a process of change through which an individual achieves abstinence and improved health, wellness, and quality of life. So you can hear how it just speaks to just kind of substance use recovery, a specific pathway of substance use recovery. And it was really important in this conversation that happened in 2010 with all those national leaders of people providing services, recovery community organizations, peers that were working in the field, to be a part of this conversation, to come up with what we have and what we saw in the previous slide. So for those that may not subscribe to an abstinence-based pathway of recovery, like those in mental health recovery or on a medication-supported pathway, this definition obviously wouldn't work for them. It didn't fly, and it didn't include aspects that we felt were essential. So you can imagine the conversations, the passion that was brought to the discussion table to get to the definition that we are now familiar with. This was a huge milestone in promoting greater public awareness and appreciation for the importance of recovery. Along with the work in defining recovery, people with lived experience were involved in the development of identifying guiding principles that we'll go over today. I want to give a shout out and show you the publication is on SAMHSA's website, so it's available for download on SAMHSA's online store. Includes a lot of the background information in that document. It's something that I have stashed away. I have a little stack of them here at the office. And just as a side note, once that definition from all those conversations and those guiding principles were compiled, they were posted on SAMHSA's blog for public comment. And a lot of those comments from the recovery community were included into this definition and these principles. SAMHSA's store is rich with resources, and if you haven't visited, highly recommend it for material for organization or for the work that you do. When I look at this definition, I think about the passion of all those who have paved the way, those faces and voices that made and continue to make an impact in advancing the recovery movement. And I hope that that passion shines through me as we go over the 10 guiding principles of recovery. Speaking of 10 guiding principles, here we are. I'll rattle them off relatively quickly. Again, this is just the abbreviated kind of focus point area, but we'll dive into a little bit more of the description here. 1 through 10, our top 10, if you will. Hope, person-driven, many pathways, holistic, peer support, relational, culture, addresses trauma, strengths and responsibility, and my favorite, RESPECT, respect. I can't see that word without spelling it and without singing it in my head. If you've been in a training of mine, you know I'll probably do a little shimmy or a dance around that. But to complement those 10 guiding principles, and in that downloadable document that's on SAMHSA's store, it also talks about these 4 dimensions of support. So through the Recovery Support Strategic Initiative, SAMHSA delineated these 4 major dimensions that support life and recovery. So we're looking at health. For example, taking care of one's health, seeing a doctor for preventative care, dental, vision, etc. That may have been previously neglected or related to any kind of alcohol or drug use, or making informed, healthy choices that support physical and emotional well-being. So really helping to overcome and manage one's disease or symptoms. Home. A stable place to live. We're looking at, considering for many, it's hard to focus on recovery without a safe and stable place to live. A roof over their head, which is difficult for the unhoused person and may need to be addressed first. Purpose, meaningful daily activities, such as a job, school, volunteerism, family caretaking, or creative endeavors. And the independence, income, and resources to participate in society. Community, relationships, and social networks that provide support, friendship, love, and hope. So having a sense of belonging in a community, which can mean our geographic community, or like our neighborhood, city, state, or our recovery community, family, or even coworkers in a supportive work environment. Of course, the current pandemic has presented significant challenges for staying connected to our peers and supportive family members. Luckily, online stuff, just like what we're doing now, online support and social media has really expanded opportunities for social networks and for support and friendships, and really slingshot us through time in really advancing how we approach being connected as a people, as a society. So if you're up for a challenge and are in a place to do so, if you're listening in, please, and driving, please don't participate. But if you are able to, grab a piece of paper, fold it in half, fold that half in half once more. Our goal here is to have 4 compartments on this piece of paper. And if you could please write at the top of each compartment a dimension of wellness. So we're looking at health, home, purpose, community. And your paper should look like this, hopefully. Yes. Oh, fantastic. And as we go through these 10 guiding principles of recovery, write down the principle under the dimension that you feel best complements that guiding principle. Yeah, write down what you feel best fits that guiding principle. No worries, we won't be grading this. We're not going to ask you to turn it in. And to be honest, there's no wrong answers. This is just for fun and to help you see how recovery is all encompassing.
There's a great question I want to make sure I touch base from on the floor here. And you may be diving into it a little later as we discuss the more in depth the guiding principles of recovery. But the question was, is harm reduction a component of the many pathways of recovery?
Absolutely. So I would say in more recent times, we're looking at, and from a lot of harm reduction advocates, really, finding their place in the whole wide world of recovery. And so when we started that definition back in those days and having those conversations, and even that previous definition that included abstinence in there, we started to see a lot of challenging of like, where do we fit in? And we're at a place now, Keegan and folks, where we are starting to look at recovery in many, 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 many different ways, including harm reduction. And so when we get to that, again, one of our 10 guiding principles is going to be multiple pathways of recovery. So we're going to get to that. Unfortunately, it's just scraping the surface as we, are looking at a whole bunch of different things. But definitely, yes, harm reduction is included in that all-encompassing pathways of recovery. Thanks for that. Any other questions, Keegs?
Nope, looks like we are smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing. So let's dive on in guiding principles of recovery. Of course, I like beginning with hope. Recovery emerges from hope, the belief that recovery is real. Recovery provides motivation for a better future. And really, this speaks to the dimension of purpose, right? So if you're following along in your 4-box exercise, that's a freebie there. Health, home, purpose, community. And with that sense of hope, it drives the recovery positive, non-stigmatizing language. So we look at this first bullet point of language, right? Everywhere that we are looking at in way of providing services and whatnot, language is super important. Language is really important. So if you think about care or service settings, if you work in any of those types of settings, walk through, do a walkthrough of your organization, of your facility, and look at the images and posters and symbolism being used. Does it empower people? Does it inspire hope? That should be a little exercise if you have the opportunity to do that. Obviously, hopefully wear a mask, keep it safe. Also, media and marketing. The language that we use in media and marketing, are the words used perpetuating stigma and discrimination and marginalization? Again, does it convey hope, right? Always thinking about how that hope really helps to inspire folks to get motivated and in their recovery process along the way. Mainstream media and language used in the community. How do we promote recovery positive language being used in news articles and television? The depiction of substance use and mental health in movies and TV shows, we're getting somewhat better, but there is more work to be done. So if we have some recovery advocates out there, give us a shout out, recovery advocates. We have some work to do. We have some work to do to hit mainstream media and really show that recovery is real, that it happens, and that we're not constantly seeing all the, the drama, the mess, right? So consider providing or attending a recovery messaging training. I think I saw that pop up in our chat here. This training has been used in our communities for quite some time now, and is commonly facilitated by peers who provide peer recovery support services, and also taught by recovery community organizations, really to empower people to use their lived experience as testimony, right? Utilize training like this in your workplace and respectfully challenge those who are still using harmful, stigmatizing language. Community information sessions or other types of community conversations give us that opportunity to have casual conversations about something important like language. Remember to talk about the why and the how, why you feel it's important to talk about recovery and how language matters and how the language we use can empower someone and bring them hope or discourage and criminalize them. We show hope for a normalization of talking about recovery in our conversations so that our friends, families, communities know that help is available, and we minimize that barrier for reaching out. There's a really great organizational tool that you and your staff may want to consider using as a practice. It's a language audit and can be found as an effective way to evaluate interaction and care for those you serve. SAMHSA has a toolkit if you'd like to give it a try. And just a little plug for the next webinar, Words Matter, Language and Stigma Reduction. So if words are a big thing and important for you, definitely want to attend this next webinar. It dives deeper into the importance of language and how to do those language audits and language change. Person-driven. Person-driven, if we truly are talking or taking a strengths-based approach to service delivery, whether it's an individual or community, we need to treat them as experts in their own experience. There may be similarities in circumstance, but individuals process situations and emotions in a unique way. Training staff to use active listening skills and effective communication to empower those that we work with to draw from their own experience so that they may make informed decisions. Language is very crucial. Yes, absolutely. If we believe in their capacity to recover, they will too. Simple as that. So really empowering individuals. So using language of hope, optimism to assist in goal setting. If these goals are being captured on paper or whatnot, consider using formats that are focused on what is going right rather than what's going wrong. Consider using WRAP or WHAM plans, WRAP Wellness Recovery Action Plans, or WHAM Whole Health Action Management Plans. And you can find some information on that out there on SAMHSA's website as well. And using techniques that you are trained on, like motivational interviewing or appreciative inquiry, really to hone in that language and communication. Ideally, the individual receiving services should be in the driver's seat and ideally be in charge of updates and changes to their plans. Service providers can assist with having adequate information on different referral options, and empowering those receiving services to make the first moves or take the first steps in owning their own recovery experience. Again, our conversation should be based on hope and highlight the participants' resiliency and strengths. Here we are, many pathways. Writing shotgun, yes, Ashley, all right. So with many pathways, we started to talk about this a bit. Really, it's based on the needs and preference and goals and culture. And above all things, it's based on the person's preference, right? The person that we're working with or is that is receiving services. Now more than ever, we're recognizing the importance of honoring and celebrating multiple pathways of recovery. So think about to ourselves, do our menu of services or list of resources really speak to that? Really speak to the multiple pathways of recovery that exist in our communities? We will talk about culture and its impact on our effectiveness. But it's worth mentioning here and in our work as a whole, how culture and diversity impacts every area of the work that we do. So, with many pathways of recovery, a person's recovery journey and experience will differ from person to person. Example, someone may be completely adverse to religion or spirituality, may not find that a 12-step approach be the best fit for them. So it might be a practice to offer information about secular mutual aid groups or recovery support groups or services that focus on health and wellness. Conversely, there may be someone who enjoys involvement with their church and congregation. They may find a faith-based approach is just what they are seeking. Community assessments or asset mapping are really useful in identifying what your community is using, what's common, what is being requested. Engaging in your community, service recipients and staff in a participatory process are key to keeping your resource list up to date, as well as build strong relationships with your community. And bonus, you'll be able to support those you work with. If we can, let's drop in chat some examples of different pathways of recovery in your community. Let's see some different pathways of recovery in your community. MAT, all right, medication-assisted treatment or medication-assisted recovery. SMART recovery. Celebrate recovery. Therapy, okay. Got some 12-step fellowships. Oh, and they're moving faster than I can see them. Culture cures, refuge recovery, yes. Recovery Dharma, all right. Social clubs, celebrating life, Native American ceremonies, yes, absolutely. Good stuff. All right, fitness is a good one as well. All recovery meetings, yes. Thank you for that, yeah. So we're looking at, on top of those multiple pathways of recovery and thinking about how culture makes that impact in how people come into and start to own their own recovery process. We also have to look at this approach of recovery being holistic. And thinking about how our care systems have historically been treated or addressed substance use and mental health in an acute manner, it's worth mentioning that there is an opportunity for improvement. And here's where a lot of peer recovery support services and peers kind of help in those areas. We miss out in supporting and providing services to the whole person if we're not looking at all the aspects of the whole person. So a holistic approach to recovery will not just initiate somebody's recovery, but will help to build practices, habits, and create community and relationships that don't just sustain the person's recovery, but allows them to flourish and blossom. Remember that some of these areas in a person's life may have contributed to or have been barriers for seeking out help and support in the first place. So exploring these areas are key practices to keep in mind. Recovery plans should also reflect areas and these aspects of a person's life. Their mind, body, spirit, community, what does that look like within that individual? And there's so many other different aspects. These are just kind of scraping again the surface. Development or involvement of a recovery-oriented system of care will help to bridge and connect a lot of potential gaps in addressing these areas. Also help with connecting resources as well. A ROSC is, or a recovery-oriented system of care, is a coordinated network of community-based services and supports that are person-centered and build on the strengths and resiliency of individuals, families, communities to achieve improved health, wellness, and quality of life for those that you serve and support. Right. One of my favorites next to HOPE and RESPECT is supported by peers. This guiding principle of recovery, supported by peers. Whenever I see the word peers, I always think about my mom and my school days and their mention of the dangers of peer pressure. What I've come to realize is that I sought out those individuals that shared same interest or I looked up to. We do the same in our recovery journey. We are drawn to those with characteristics or qualities that we embody or are growing within ourselves or desire to attain. These relationships enhance skills, encourage growth, and give us a sense of community, belonging, purpose. Again, we're hearing some of those 4 dimensions, right? 4 major dimensions: health, home, purpose, community. That sense of belonging is exciting and empowering and drives people to give back and reach out to others. So again, you know, each one reaching out to the other, and paying it forward. I now see peer pressure, as mom would say, and the teachers would say, through a new lens in recovery, something that is encouraged, that encourages growth and is supportive and nurturing. I think about all the instances in my life where I'm saying that I can't, and I have peers that are surrounding me that say, yeah, you can do it. You got it. You got this. And I'm like, yeah, I do. That's a sense of like, it's an influence. It's an influence. So depending on your location, well, first off, let me mention that also when we talk about peers, we're talking about the folks that we are maybe in recovery or alongside us in our recovery journey as friends or are in the same pathway as we are in. But also too, we're talking about the professional role called peer. So depending on your location, and this trained and most likely credentialed or certified role may be called a peer worker, peer recovery coach, peer recovery support specialist, peer specialist. Throw some names in there in chat of what you all call those certified or credentialed peers in your state. What do you call your certified peer roles in your state? CARES, certified peer support specialist, recovery coach. CRS, all right, certified. Excellent. CPRS. Okay. Okay. Oh, now it's moving really fast. Recovery support specialist. Yeah. Certified addiction recovery coach. All right. See, there's a lot of different names out there. From state to state, it's going to be different. And usually the credentialing process, you know, from state to state is also different. The material that we learn from may be different, but I guarantee you it has this same baseline that follows these guiding principles and major dimensions and really speak to, you know, a definition of recovery. This is probably where we're more familiar with that recent definition of recovery. All right, fantastic. So it's important to know that people who are in mental health or substance use recovery who have received training on how to utilize their lived experience in supporting others and are trained to be professional, to be ethical, and are bound by a professional code of ethics, once they're certified, this is an important key. It's an important key to help delineate or differentiate the difference between peer, hey, I'm in recovery, you're in recovery, versus peer, I've gone through training and I have some ethical responsibilities and a framework to operate within. So we're talking about this dual term here. That's why I have in the first bullet point, lowercase peers, and bigger, case in that second bullet point, peers. And so peers offer peer recovery support services, PRSS, peer recovery support services. These are really authentic services designed and delivered by people in recovery, and evaluated, and the list goes on. Please distinguish peers versus counselors. So counselors, we may, as peers, go through a certification or credentialing process and don't necessarily have a license attached to that. Also, too, with counselors or clinicians, they go through a more rigorous, educational experience, right? So they're learning more in-depthly how to diagnose mental health or substance use. They may be making formal referrals to specific areas like treatment, or and so we're looking at some of those differences with peers. And we learned this in a lot of our training, is that we're not clinicians. We don't diagnose. We may be able to recognize the signs and symptoms, but when all said and done, we're not making those formal clinical referrals. And so to learn more about the distinguishment between peers and counselors, and even role integrity and role function, there's a lot of material out there that can really, speak to that as well. One of my great thinkers that come to mind is William White, who's actually written in an article, a paper around differentiating and maintaining those roles, distinguishing peer roles, clinical roles, and even 12-step sponsor roles from a community aspect as well. Great questions. Good stuff coming up here. All right. And of course, this last bullet point, allies, these folks may not be in recovery, but they just get it, right? We have some folks in our lives that really just get it. They get that people in recovery are trying their hardest to make changes in their lives, and they cheer us on from the sidelines, and at times just jump right on in and support us. They give us opportunities, they trust us, they are our friends, providers, physicians, barbers, co-workers. Relationships with allies are such an empowering relationship to have. Allies may have not shared the same experiences, but they believe in us. They don't look down their noses at us, don't infantilize us. They don't treat us like charity cases, and they help to, empower us. And with that belief, circling back to that first guiding principle of hope, they give us that hope. They start to believe in us, and we start to believe in ourselves, right? Really important. Yes, excellent. Thank you, Cindy, for posting that. Yes. Relationship and social networks. Again, if you're following along and doing the box, relationship and social networks, community, right? Community. So recovery is supported through relationship and social networks. We're seeing a lot of reiteration of community and connection and relationship in these guiding principles. So it's important that we start considering how we include opportunities for these connections in the work that we do. It's not just like, are you not using, how are you feeling? But really thinking about, again, holistically, what is your connection to your community? What do your social networks look like? Again, surrounding ourselves with people that encourage us and make us feel like winners. We'll start to begin to feel like heroes in our own journey. We leave unhealthy relationships behind. We take ownership of who and what we want out in life, right? In our life. So in my recovery, I made a decision to not surround myself with people that were going to pull me down, but to really lift me up. So the dynamic of my friendships and relationships, and even, the relationship dynamic with my family did make some changes, right? These supportive relationships led to a greater sense of belonging, personhood, empowerment, autonomy, social inclusion, and community participation. So really, thinking about a lot of those social and social networks and those relationships. And again, during the time of COVID, how do we make those connections? And also thinking too, in our rural communities, how are those social connections and involvement in a sense of community? How is that being met? So if you're in a rural area, I'd love to, hear about how you're supporting individuals and connecting and strengthening those social networks. Keegan, do we have a question or any questions?
Not at this time. They are rolling in though. Definitely appreciate touching base.
Fantastic. Culturally based, I've mentioned culture a few different times, but culturally based and influenced, of course, culture impacts how people act and react to situations. In seeking assistance for our mental health and our substance use, cultural upbringing may be a barrier or asset in seeking support. So consider cultural values, traditions, beliefs, history, and dynamic and family dynamic. Those are just some of the components that can influence someone's recovery journey and unique pathway. In positioning ourselves and our organization to be culturally responsive, it is safe to say that no one person or one organization has things all figured out. But we should be intentional in our approach and be aware of what we don't know and be able to address our own privilege and bias. With community asset assessments and asset mapping, we can start to identify who and what cultures make up the community, as well as who's missing from the table and why. Although I consider myself to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community and am familiar with organizations and terminology and traditions and celebrations, I can't claim to be an expert on all the cultures and communities that make up the larger LGBTQ plus umbrella. Being familiar with different cultural dynamics increases effectiveness and really impacts the work that we do. Consider how we can build our knowledge base and relationships with the different cultures that make up our community. Are there any leaders or gatekeepers that could assist in building relationships within a culture or community? From those growing relationships, you can have ongoing conversations to hear and learn about the strengths, the needs, and wants that those communities are asking for and would like to, and we can ask them how we can help. Getting to know you, building up that relationship, the rapport, hearing what those things are, and then asking, how can we help? Ongoing evaluation and conversation. Again, we're talking about relationships, continuing those relationships, ongoing conversations. It's not a one and done. It's not a one and done. So ongoing evaluation and conversations. Knowledge of diverse cultures may enable us to make not just forward-facing aspects of our organization culturally congruent or responsive, but internally as well. Think about, if you're working in an organization, think about your policies and procedures manual. Just start there, right? Start there. What kind of cultural considerations, and if we put on our culture considerations goggles and we saw through those lenses, what kind of changes would we make in our policies and procedures manual? as we're in this time, this month of holidays, what kind of days are off in our policies and procedures? What kind of paid holidays do we have? Are they recognizing and reflecting the culture that we exist in within our communities, right? Thinking about those days that we have off. So intentionally and strategically develop outreach and programming plans that include the members of those communities. Communities want and need to be heard and supported. Callan, I see your face pop up. You have something for me?
Yes. Yeah, thanks. There was one question about why people need to identify as someone in recovery. And so I thought it might be a great time to answer it because I think that kind of lends itself to recovery culture. So I will read it specifically just so everyone can hear. Gary asked, I'm curious why there's a need for people in recovery to identify as being people in recovery. We all struggle with the underlying issues of why people use substances such as depression, avoidance of emotion, social interaction, etc. Why is there a divide, or why is it specifically important for people in recovery to identify as people in recovery?
And thank you for that question. For a long time, we have, as folks in recovery or in and seeking recovery, there have been a lot of barriers to actually getting the support that we need. And a lot of those decisions are made in those communities by voters, by legislation that may have previously no experience of what recovery looks like or that recovery is possible. And so the recovery movement has really, come out of the closet, so to speak, about being in recovery to say, yes, recovery is possible. And I've been working alongside you and you trust me. And these laws, these bills, these things that are these systems that have been put into place are roadblocks and barriers to people really getting the support that they need. So I personally come out about my recovery experience because not a lot of people know that, at least from a cultural standpoint, as a Latinx person in recovery, in our culture, we don't talk about recovery. We don't talk about alcoholism, drug use, but it's something that is hardwired in my culture, in my family. All the tios and tias, the uncles and aunts that are obviously having struggles with their substance use, we don't talk about it. We look the other way. I have come out in my family around my substance use recovery, and I guarantee you, I can't go to a single family event without a family member pulling me aside and say, "Mijo, son, I have a coworker that is having problems with the drugs or alcohol. What can we do?" Now imagine if I wasn't out about my recovery. Then that my family member would not have had that person that they trusted, that is a family member that they can go to as a resource. We are living proof that recovery is possible. And the more and more people are out about their recovery, the more impact that we have with our neighbors, and with decisions that are being made within our communities as well. It's really empowering to see that more and more people are being more vocal about recovery, and that does influence a lot of different bills or laws that are being passed that may be discriminatory. Right, great question. And so in the messaging training that can be found in your communities, we talk about that as well, about the importance of that as well. Addressing trauma, getting back to our guiding principles here. We're coming up to the tail end. Addressing trauma. Although we might be able to recognize possible signs of stress or distress caused by trauma, we want to remember that the absence of those signs does not mean that an individual has not experienced a traumatic event or is living life free of trauma. We know that trauma can be deeply hidden in a person, and a circumstance or situation may trigger that at any time in any situation. So it's best to inform ourselves of what trauma is and how we can best support the person in addressing that. Trauma can be caused by a number of different circumstances, events or situations in a person's life, and like pathways of recovery, each person has their own unique and personal journey of processing and getting well. Begin with self-evaluation. Gauge the level of understanding as to what it means to be trauma informed. How have your current practices helped? If you're working in a setting, how have current practices helped or possibly harmed those who have experienced trauma? Who do you partner or collaborate or refer people to? Do they have trauma-informed care practices in place? Seek out appropriate training for yourself and your team. Training on trauma is not a one and done deal, right? Consider introductory trauma training, a trauma 101, if you will, and continuing training on how culture, race, ethnicity, age, language, sexual orientation, gender identity, all impact a person's experience of trauma and healing. SAMHSA's National Center for Trauma-Informed Care, NCTIC, hosted a webinar series of 3 75-minute webinars in September of 2014 that introduced key concepts in the National Center for Trauma-Informed Care's day-long trauma-informed peer support training, the TIPS training. And we're going to have a link included in the PowerPoint presentation that we send out to you to that. That primary audience for people who provide peer support, that was their target audience there for that. I encourage everyone to check those out, but also seek out live interactive training where the facilitator is trained to create a safe and comfortable environment for asking questions and to provide support should anything arise within us during the course of the training. Implement what you've learned. This may take a review of physical environments where support and services are provided, review and revision of policies and procedures, development of trauma-informed care practices. Services and support should be trauma-informed to foster safety, physical and emotional, and trust, as well as promote choice, empowerment, and collaboration. I have an image here really quickly. It is the 6 guiding principles to a trauma-informed approach. This was pulled together by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention in collaboration with the previous NCTIC. I don't know if you can see this here, but I'll read it out to you. It's very eloquently written. So adopting a trauma-informed approach is not accomplished through any single particular technique or checklist. It requires constant attention, caring awareness, sensitivity, and possibly a cultural change at an organizational level. So again, this is thrown in there to into that slide deck, along with the link to this infographic and the NCTIC's webinar series as well. So that's going to be included in your resources. Again, trauma-informed training, not a one and done thing. Individual, family, and community. Again, if you're following along, guess where that goes? Just a hint, community there. Recovery involves individuals, families, and community strengths and responsibilities, right? So here is another guiding principle of recovery that coincides with those four major dimensions. Again, those four major dimensions: health, home, purpose, community. Real huge emphasis on community here on this one. In this guiding principle, we see how the individual, family member, and community have their own responsibilities and opportunities for bringing their strengths and resources to the table. Everyone has a role. The individual is responsible and empowered to own what their recovery journey looks like and what kind of services and supports they utilize, and be able to advocate for themselves with their peers, what their strengths, needs, wants, desires are, right? Similar to the guiding principle of person driven, right? The individual is in the driver's seat, right? We've mentioned that before. If we see this as a kind of a road trip, if you will, our family and community are in the car as well. Families support their loved ones. This could look different from family to family, financial, emotional, whatever it may be. The family is an excellent member of our cheerleader section. Sometimes those in and seeking recovery may be cut off from their biological families. This might be a common experience, at least that I've seen with the LGBTQ plus community, and historically we've sought out our peers. Like those in recovery, we seek out others with similar experiences. So family of choice, if you will, a group of people that speak the same language, have the same experience, sometimes the same hurts, and coming together in unconditional love and support. Family too should seek out and take ownership of their recovery process, whether that is through therapy or counseling or mutual or secular faith-based support groups. Community is a big one here. Although a recovery journey may begin in an institution or program, it is grown and sustained in the community. And our communities are charged with the responsibility of supporting and providing opportunities and resources. Resources like collegiate recovery programs, recovery high schools, recovery residencies, recovery community organizations, recovery-friendly workplaces. In New Hampshire, we have some New Hampshire folks. Throw up NH in our chat. In New Hampshire, there are a recovery-friendly workplace initiative that I absolutely recommend reading about. Again, threw that into our resource on our slide deck as well. We should be asking ourselves, are our communities recovery ready? Are they talking about and addressing discrimination in laws and acts and bills and advocating for change to support those in and seeking recovery? Prejudice, discrimination, and stigma exclude those in recovery from activities that are open to other people, like employment, housing, healthcare. We need to recognize that some laws or bills are discriminatory, and communities need to address systemic racism and inequity. All these factor into how communities can foster social inclusion and embrace recovery. Another reason why we come out about our recovery, right? If our communities don't know that recovery is possible and what recovery looks like, that face and voice of recovery, then they're oblivious and are not ready for those supports that they need. And last but not least, if you want to dance along with me, RESPECT, respect. Above all recovery is based on respect. It takes a lot of courage to admit to oneself, let alone their family and friends, that they need help. But it also takes courage to take that help and that support and engage in services and supports or programs. We need to recognize that those living with mental health or substance use are resilient and deserve respect, right of choice, and equitable access to services. With that respect, we're able to don our super positive or superhero cape on and courageousness, and develop a positive, meaningful sense of who we are, embrace our recovery journey, and take the lead in our own recovery process. Because people believed in me, I started to believe in myself. Today, my recovery has given me the honor and privilege to present to you today. And on that note of respect, I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. And I know we are at time. I see Callan's face, Cindy's face. Great.
You know, when it's 3 o'clock, you see the faces.
Perfect
Thank
time.
you, Joseph. That was really wonderful. I appreciate your presentation and your time, and thank you all for attending. I know people are jumping off, and I usually pass it back to Cindy, but I'll just try to say real quickly that you will get the slides and any materials within a week. That email will come from Cindy, so it'll be Cindy Christie. And the link for a certificate of participation will be included. And we also really enjoy reading your feedback. So there will be an evaluation link in that email also. Feel free to let us know your thoughts, anything you want to see in the future, things like that. And then we do have a couple upcoming, there's another training next week. So if you'd like to register for that, be on the lookout for that email as well. But I will let everybody jump off and have a great rest of your week. Thanks again for joining us.
Big thank you, Joseph.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.